So I stepped away onto the next cell, feeling I'd just been on holy ground. I knew I'd never see Michael again and assumed the story of our brief encounter had ended. I never dreamed that Michael's story and mine had another chapter to come, a chapter that would challenge me to begin to rethink what I thought I knew about forgiveness. Living condemned, yet free. Angola Prison, the Louisiana State Penitentiary, where each prisoner is serving a life sentence, seems an unlikely place to spark new thoughts and deeper understanding of forgiveness. It is, after all, a place where every prisoner has to pay the earthly consequences of their crimes. Every one of the over 6,000 inmates, except in a few very rare exceptions, would die within its confines, some by execution, others by old age or illness or injury. Burl Kane, the warden, had invited Ruth Graham and friends, the ministry God had given to me, to minister to the inmates on this particular weekend, and we had allowed the press to chronicle our visit. I had accepted the invitation to the swamp-surrounded prison grounds months before, with confidence that the gospel of Jesus Christ could make a huge difference in the lives of the inmates. I confess that before meeting Michael, as I passed all the razor wire and walked the long concrete corridor to death row, my footsteps echoing in the stifling atmosphere, I worried that I was inadequate for the job. After all, what did I, a middle-aged homemaker and grandmother, have to say that could make a difference in the lives of what I assumed were hardened criminals? In fact, in the moment I first heard the great steel gates clang shut behind me upon entering death row that day, my only thought was a sick feeling of inadequacy and anxiety that embarrassed me. I tried to quiet my rattled emotions, but reminding myself that I was safe, and my stay was only temporary. I was acutely aware that such thoughts were not the stuff of a victorious spiritual moment. My nervousness made me all the more grateful for my traveling companions, the wonderful team of dedicated men and women who shared the ministry of Ruth Graham and friends. We were used to traveling together to minister all over the country and beyond, from an ice hockey stadium in Canada to city auditoriums, churches, and retreat centers. Wherever the Lord opened doors for us to cover topics that often weren't discussed in many churches. Each member of the team had an area of expertise: a psychologist who spoke on depression, another on domestic abuse, a minister who spoke of his experience recovering from addiction to pornography, a woman who shared her recovery from abortion, and another her recovery from drug addiction. All of them had more experience in prison ministry than me, but none of us were prison ministry experts. When we reached death row, our team split up so we could go to cell and speak individually with as many prisoners as possible. I was uneasy. I've always reacted negatively to the idea of people in cages. As a young woman, I went as part of a church ministry team to a local prison. The sight of lovely young women behind bars haunted me. I talked and laughed with them, related to them, and prayed with them. Later I found out that the woman I'd seemed to connect with the most was a murderer, and I promptly decided I was probably not called to prison ministry. Clearly, as I now stood on death row, God was causing me to rethink that conclusion, showing me that it was His power and presence, not mine, that made a difference in hearts and souls. After meeting Michael, I heard others' stories, through ears newly opened to the reality that we weren't bringing God with us, but rather were meeting Him already there, at work in powerful ways. No longer concerned about my inadequacy, I was able to see God's power at work, something so evident that day. I met men at every level of faith, some who wanted nothing to do with us and turned their backs, some curious about God, some hungry to hear of God's love for them, some eager to share their faith stories with me, and some men of great faith, humbled by brokenness, yet who appeared healed and whole. When we led worship with the inmates, we were overwhelmed with the power of thanksgiving and rejoicing we witnessed. So many of these prisoners were living in true freedom. How had they done it? How had they accepted God's forgiveness for the wrongs they had done? I had trouble doing that for myself. How had they forgiven themselves? A major struggle for me. How had they forgiven the many who had wronged them along their painful journeys? My journey paled in comparison to the pain many of them had known. I couldn't imagine. When we left, I took those questions with me, determined to seek answers from God. My moments with Michael, in particular, stayed on my heart. He had left me with a powerful image of a man whose soul was well and whose spirit was free.